Welcome back, gearheads. In the 1990s, while the world drooled over Ferraris and Supras, some of the fastest cars wore beige paint and wire hubcaps. One of these could gap a Camaro at a red light, while looking like it just left a retirement home. These are the 15 unknown sleeper beasts of the 1990s. Let's go. Number 15, 1992, Honda Accord EXR. A car built for the suburbs, but tuned just enough to chase down a Prelude? Let's start the list with something that looks like it should be idling outside a dentist's office. Soft lines, modest wheels, and just enough chrome to whisper respectable, not fast. But buried under that restrained design was a variant that only Canadians had access to. A family sedan that wore a business suit but had a streak of rebellion. This unassuming four-door was powered by a 2.2-liter DOHC VTEC inline-4. The same F22A engine lineage you'd find in sportier Hondas, but with a twist. The EXR trim brought upgrades that most people didn't even know existed. Producing around 145 horsepower and 137 pound-feet of torque, it wasn't a drag strip king, but it wasn't built to be. What made it interesting was how effortlessly it revved, how tightly it cornered for its class, and how surprisingly quick it could be in the right hands. The 0 to 60 miles per hour came in around 8.5 seconds, respectable for the early 90s, especially when the car looked like it belonged in a grocery store parking lot. The EXR trim packed four-wheel disc brakes, a tighter suspension, and even optional anti-lock brakes, rare back then. And unlike its American cousins, this trim came standard with some performance-minded goodies, including a 5-speed manual option that made all the difference. It didn't shout about its speed, it just quietly got the job done, pulling away from more aggressive cars with a kind of smug silence. But it wasn't perfect. The interior felt basic, with Honda's minimalist design ethos in full swing. Functional, but far from luxurious. And while the engine had personality, it lacked the raw numbers to impress those obsessed with straight-line dominance. On the outside, it was practically invisible. Great for a sleeper, less so for anyone craving attention. Still, that's the point. It wasn't made to be remembered, which is exactly why it deserves to be. A Canadian market special, hiding just enough performance under its skin to surprise anyone who assumed Honda Accord meant slow. Coming up next, a full-size American sedan that looked more like a retirement plan than a racing threat, but packed torque that could humble early Mustangs. Number 14, 1993 Buick Regal GS 3.8. A car built for retirement homes, but quick enough to spook a Camaro? Let's talk Buick. From the understated precision of a Canadian Honda, we now head into classic American territory, where bench seats, soft suspensions, and chrome accents reign. You'd never expect performance here, right? But behind the steering wheel of this next car, Grandpa might have been sitting on a secret. At first glance, the 1993 Buick Regal GS doesn't stir excitement. It's the kind of car you'd expect to see pulling into a pharmacy drive-thru, not revving at a stoplight. The styling was muted, even in GS trim, with flush headlights, a softly sloped nose, and body-colored trim that tried, and failed, to scream sporty. But beneath that quiet shell was GM's 3.8-liter V6, an engine with more grunt than anyone was expecting. This wasn't the supercharged 3,800 yet. That came later. But even in naturally aspirated form, it was a torque-heavy beast. With 170 horsepower and 225 pound-feet of torque, it could launch with surprising urgency. The 0 to 60 mile per hour time hovered around 8 seconds flat, which meant it wasn't just quicker than it looked. It was faster than many cars people thought were fast. Where the Buick really caught people off guard was in the mid-range. That torque came on early and pulled like a freight train. The GS badge wasn't just cosmetic either. This version featured a firmer suspension, a tighter steering rack, and disc brakes all around. Enough to keep it planted when you really pushed it, even if the interior still smelled like mothballs and Metamucil. But no car's perfect. Despite its torque, the Regal GS was paired with a 4-speed automatic that felt confused when pushed too hard. And while it could hustle in a straight line, the soft chassis tuning meant it wasn't exactly carving corners. Inside, Buick still leaned heavily into plushness, faux wood trim, digital gauges, and seats that felt like lazy boys on wheels. Sporty? Not really. Capable? Absolutely. That's what makes it such a good sleeper. No spoilers, no aggressive angles, just pure old-school grunt hiding under a vinyl roof. And the best part? Nobody ever saw it coming. And if that's just how we're starting this list, you'll want to see what's lurking further up. A luxury coupe so forgettable in design, you probably walked past one last week without noticing. But under the hood, it shared its heart with a Corvette. Number 13. 1994 Toyota Crown Royal Saloon. A chauffeured cruiser with lace seat covers, packing the engine of a legend? This Toyota might have been a car your uncle imported, which was accidentally fast. Coming off the plush but punchy Buick, we crossed the Pacific to meet something far more refined on the surface. This next car wasn't sold new in the US, but those who knew what to look for were quietly importing it. It was marketed to executives, politicians, and wealthy retirees in Japan. It rode like a cloud, wore doilies on the headrests, and whispered down the highway. But behind all the chrome and wood grain, it hid something serious. The 1994 Toyota Crown Royal Saloon is a sleeper in the truest sense. Luxury outside, performance deep beneath. Under its long, stately hood sat the 2JZGE, the naturally aspirated version of the engine that would become famous for powering the legendary Toyota Supra. While it didn't have a turbo, this inline six still pushed 220 horsepower and around 210 pound-feet of torque. Smooth, reliable, and deceptively quick for a car that looked more like a mobile boardroom. Paired with a 4-speed automatic and rear-wheel drive, the Crown wasn't built for launches, but get it rolling, and it moved with surprising urgency. The 0 to 60 mile/hour time hovered around 8 seconds. Impressive for a sedan that weighed nearly 3,700 pounds and came with factory curtains. It handled with grace, gliding more than gripping, but the straight-line composure was undeniable. And if you knew how to mod a 2JZ, well, this luxury cruiser had endless headroom for performance gains. Its strengths didn't stop at the engine. The Crown came loaded. Climate control, soft closed doors, electronically controlled suspension, and a cabin so quiet it felt like it ran on electricity. It made silence a luxury, but that refinement came at a cost. The car's biggest weakness? It was too polite, too quiet, too restrained. The transmission was lazy unless you forced its hand, and the styling was pure grandpa energy. Even the badging played it safe. If you didn't know what to look for, you'd mistake it for any old luxury barge from the 90s. But that's exactly why it works. No one expects a Toyota Crown to keep up with sports sedans, or even muscle cars, until it does. Next up, a compact from Germany that looked like it belonged in a professor's driveway, but had the same engine as its track-tuned cousin. Number 12. 1996 Chrysler LHS 3.5 liter. A front-wheel drive yacht built for quiet commutes, with just enough punch to surprise a Mustang GT, this was the Chrysler's forgotten flagship. After the understated Japanese elegance of the Crown, we swing back to American shores, straight into something that looks more suited for a country club valet line than a drag strip. Big, wide, and vaguely futuristic for its time, the 1996 Chrysler LHS was Chrysler's luxury gamble in the 90s. With swooping cab-forward styling and a silhouette that screamed executive cruiser, no one really paid attention to what was under the hood. That was their mistake. Hiding behind the oversized grille and opera lighting was Chrysler's 3.5-liter SOHC V6, making 214 horsepower and 221 pound-feet of torque. Now that might not sound like much on paper, especially for a car that stretched over 200 inches long. But thanks to smart gearing and relatively low weight for its size, the LHS could hustle 0 to 60 miles per hour in just over 7.5 seconds, quicker than many V8-powered sedans of the same era. It wasn't loud about it either. No exhaust bark, no badging to hint at performance, just a long, confident pull that felt far more composed than expected. That composure was its biggest weapon. With Chrysler's auto-stick transmission giving you manual control of the shifts, a rare feature at the time, the LHS gave drivers a surprising amount of engagement for something that looked like it belonged in a retirement brochure. Add in four-wheel disc brakes and a well-tuned suspension, and you had a sleeper in luxury clothes. But no car this long can completely escape its size. The LHS wasn't agile, it floated. It leaned in corners, understeered if pushed too hard, and the steering was more suggestion than instruction. And while the cabin was spacious and packed with leather and real wood trim, build quality could be hit or miss, typical 90s Chrysler. Still, for a car that most people mistook for a rental upgrade or a dad's company perk, the LHS could really move when provoked. No spoilers, no sport badges, just clean lines, cushy seats, and the ability to walk away from more serious cars at a stoplight. Coming up next, a forgotten coupe from Germany that looks like it was made for lectures and briefcases until you realize it shares DNA with Autobahn royalty. Number 11, 1993 Acura Vigor GS. A sensible sedan with a strange name and a powertrain that came from a sports car's fever dream? After the long and laid-back Chrysler LHS, we shift gears, literally and metaphorically, to something smaller, sharper, and far more obscure. The 1993 Acura Vigor GS was one of those in-between cars, often dismissed because it didn't fit neatly into anyone's expectations. Too refined to be sporty, too compact to be a flagship, and too unusual to sell in big numbers. The Vigor quietly slipped into Acura's lineup between the Integra and the Legend, and just as quietly disappeared. But it left behind a peculiar legacy. What made it so strange? Start with the engine. A 2.5-liter inline-5, yes, 5 cylinders, mounted longitudinally and driving the front wheels. That alone was enough to make car nerds raise an eyebrow. Producing 176 horsepower and 170 pound-feet of torque, the Vigor GS wasn't neck-snapping quick, but its torque curve and rev-happy nature made it surprisingly spry. 0 to 60 miles per hour came in around 7.9 seconds, but it was the way it did it, silky, balanced, and eager, that caught people off guard. It moved more like a European sports sedan than a Japanese commuter. Built on a unique platform and using a near 60-40 weight distribution, the Vigor handled better than it had any right to. Double wishbone suspension all around, tight steering, and a relatively low curb weight meant this car carved up back roads while still delivering a near Lexus-like ride on the highway. The GS trim added a 5-speed manual option, further boosting its enthusiast cred, if you could find one. But the Vigor's biggest enemy was confusion. It looked too conservative for sports sedan buyers and was too expensive for Accord customers. Its name didn't help either. Vigor sounded like a brand of vitamins, not a luxury car. And while the build quality was pure Honda, the market didn't know what to do with it. Within a few years, it was replaced by the TL, safer, simpler, and far more conventional. Still, for those who got their hands on one, the Vigor GS offered a stealthy mix of balance, personality, and precision. A car you'd never notice until it flew past you on an empty stretch of road. Next, a Swedish sedan so straight-laced it could pass for a library shuttle until it showed up to the autocross. Number 10, 1998 Mercedes-Benz E430, a luxury sedan built to be reserved, smooth, and understated, yet with a V8 that could embarrass sportier competitors. Leaving behind the quirky Acura Vigor, we make our way to the land of German engineering, where prestige, performance, and stealthy speed come together in a surprisingly unassuming package. The 1998 Mercedes-Benz E430 might look like a mere high-end executive sedan, but beneath its smooth exterior lies a different story altogether. The E430 wasn't a car built to shout its credentials. It wasn't a flashy AMG model or something brimming with raw aggression. Instead, it was a comfortable, safe, and sophisticated sedan that catered to business elites. Yet it was powered by a 4.3-liter V8 engine, delivering a solid 275 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque. That's right, a V8 under the hood of a car that at first glance looked more at home in a golf course parking lot than on a winding road. But despite its high-end features, the E430 was no slouch. With its 0 to 60 mile per hour time of 6.9 seconds, it could easily put up a fight with the so-called sports sedans of the day. It wasn't the most nimble car, but with its rear-wheel drive layout and advanced suspension, it handled like a proper German machine, stable at high speeds, comfortable on long hauls, but with a surprising amount of push when you gave it the right pedal. The V8, though tuned more for comfort than outright speed, made this E-Class feel powerful enough to leave lesser cars wondering what just happened. But like many sleepers, the E430 wasn't without its flaws. The ride, while plush, could sometimes feel a bit too soft, especially in corners. And though it wasn't as prone to flashy breakdowns as its contemporaries, the repair costs were a reminder of the Mercedes luxury tax. Still, for the price, few cars combined as much comfort, class, and hidden performance. If you didn't look closely, you might miss it, but drive it and you'd realize this quiet, luxurious sedan could easily hold its own against the sportier contenders of the time. And if you're enjoying these hidden gems, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more sleeper stories that'll keep you on the edge of your seat. More surprises are just around the corner. Number 9. 1995 Peugeot 405 Mi16. A family sedan dressed to blend in, But don't let the unassuming looks fool you. It was quick enough to embarrass some hot hatches. After the quiet elegance of the Mercedes E430, we turn our attention to something a bit more unconventional. A car that might look like a sensible family sedan, but was hiding a performance heart underneath its mild-mannered exterior. Enter the 1995 Peugeot 405 Me16, a car that might be better remembered for its rally pedigree than its place in everyday commuting. The 405 Me16 wasn't the kind of car you'd expect to sneak up on anything fast. It didn't scream performance with bulging fenders or sporty badges. Yet, under the hood sat a 2.0-liter 16-valve inline-4 engine that produced a healthy 160 horsepower and 136 pound-feet of torque, giving the 405 Me16 a surprising edge in a world where most sedans played it safe. With a 0 to 60 mile/hour time of just 8.2 seconds, this seemingly tame sedan could give many of its more aggressive counterparts a real run for their money, especially in its time. The Me16's true strength was its handling. With a lightweight build and sharp steering, it was more like a hot hatch than a sedan, only with more refinement and stability at higher speeds. Its advanced suspension and rear-wheel drive layout gave it an agility that made driving through twisty roads a pure pleasure. This was the type of car that made you wonder why it wasn't getting the attention it deserved, especially with its stellar balance and solid driving dynamics. But the Me16 wasn't perfect. The ride could be a bit harsh at times, especially on less than perfect roads. And it wasn't the most comfortable car on long trips. And with its relatively low production numbers, it was a model that didn't get the fanfare it should have. The real kicker? It was frequently overshadowed by more well-known competitors like the Ford Escort RS Cosworth, which stole much of the performance sedan spotlight in the 90s. So do you think the 405 Me16 should have had more recognition in its heyday? Or was it truly just a hidden gem? Drop a comment and let me know. Number 8. 1998 Lincoln Mark 8 LSC. A luxury coupe that looked like a comfort cruiser but had the power to spook sportier competitors? Now we dive into something that screams luxury on the outside, yet hides a surprisingly potent powertrain under its polished skin. The 1998 Lincoln Mark 8 LSC was a car that had all the elegance of a classic American luxury coupe, but wasn't afraid to throw down when the moment came. The Mark 8 LSC was meant to be the ultimate grand tourer, a smooth and plush ride designed for long, comfortable trips. But under that elegant, somewhat conservative exterior, there was a 4.6-liter V8 engine pumping out 280 horsepower and 290 pound-feet of torque. This was no ordinary luxury car engine. 0 to 60 miles per hour came in just 7 seconds, a remarkable figure for a car that didn't look like it had much to prove. That V8 delivered plenty of low-end grunt and revved eagerly, making this coupe far quicker than its refined appearance suggested. But the performance wasn't just in the engine. The Mark 8 LSC was equipped with air suspension, allowing for a smooth ride but with the ability to stiffen up when the car needed more precision on tight corners. Its rear-wheel drive layout and precise handling made it a surprisingly competent driver's car. The LSC package included sportier features such as better brakes and upgraded suspension, all of which allowed it to confidently tackle winding roads and high-speed freeway runs without losing its cool. Yet the Mark 8 LSC had its flaws. While it handled admirably for its size, it was still a large, heavy car, and the air suspension system, while innovative, was prone to expensive repairs. Also, its looks, though smooth and sleek, were often seen as too subtle for those seeking a truly aggressive sports coupe. But for those in the know, it was a luxury vehicle with muscle car chops, a true sleeper that could easily surprise a Mustang owner in the right conditions. The Mark 8 LSC never quite became a performance icon, but for those who experienced its mix of comfort and power, it remains a standout example of understated American engineering. But just when you thought you'd seen the last of the American sleepers, there's another contender. A car that not only flew under the radar, but could leave some of its more popular rivals eating its dust, and it came from a brand you might not expect. Stay tuned for the next one. Number 7, 1997, Infiniti Q45T. A luxury sedan with the tech of the future and a powertrain that could keep up with the best of them. We're stepping into a more refined, futuristic contender, one that wrapped cutting-edge technology and a surprising amount of power into a sophisticated package. Enter the 1997 Infiniti Q45T, a luxury sedan that might have flown under the radar for most, but for those who looked closer, it was a genuine performance sleeper. The Q45T came from Infinity's quest to take on Europe's finest, cars like the Mercedes-Benz S-Class and BMW 7 Series. It wasn't just a comfortable cruiser with soft leather seats. Underneath that polished, almost understated exterior was a 4.1-liter V8 engine, pushing out 278 horsepower and 292 pound-feet of torque, while its acceleration time of around 6.7 seconds for 0 to 60 miles per hour wasn't earth-shattering. It was more than enough to leave many other luxury sedans in the dust. What truly set the Q45T apart, though, was its technology. The sedan boasted features that were ahead of their time, like a self-leveling suspension, a smart cruise control system, and an active rear spoiler that adjusted based on speed. But the real magic was in how it blended all of this tech with an effortlessly smooth driving experience. The Q45T offered more than just power. It delivered an intelligent, adaptive ride that made it one of the most comfortable sedans of the era. But not everything about the Q45T was perfect. Its looks were sleek, but they didn't demand attention. With a design that favored subtlety, it wasn't the type of car that screamed performance, which meant its true capabilities often went unnoticed. It also had a tendency to be overlooked by people focused on the more overtly sporty options from European manufacturers. Additionally, as with many high-tech sedans, the Q45T's electronics could get expensive to maintain if they ever malfunction. Despite its flaws, the Infiniti Q45T was an incredible sleeper. It wasn't just a luxury sedan, it was a wolf in sheep's clothing. And speaking of cars that could surprise you, our next contender is another one of those seemingly ordinary sedans that might just have you second-guessing what's under the hood. Stick around, because the next one is a sleeper in the truest sense of the word. Number 6. 1993 Toyota Aristo W300. A luxury sedan with a near-invisible edge, but underneath the skin, it was a JDM powerhouse. Let's turn the page to a car that has arguably become one of the most sought-after sleepers in the history of Japanese performance. The 1993 Toyota Aristo W300, which later made its way to the US as the GS300, didn't seem like much at first glance. It was a sleek, refined luxury sedan, smooth, understated, and exactly what you'd expect from Toyota in the early 90s. Yet beneath that gentle exterior was a performance car hiding in plain sight. The magic of the Aristo W300 was its 2J ZGTE engine, the same legendary power plant that would later be immortalized in the Toyota Supra Mk4. The Aristo W300's engine churned out 280 horsepower and 318 pound-feet of torque, giving it more than enough power to effortlessly outpace many of the performance sedans of the era. It could go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 5.8 seconds, a time that could surprise any driver who expected the Aristo to be just another luxury cruiser. But here's where the Aristo's sleeper status really takes shape. No one knew it. While other performance sedans wore their muscle on their sleeves with aggressive body kits or loud exhausts, the Aristo kept a low profile. Its design was simple, elegant, and entirely understated, a far cry from what you'd expect from a car capable of such performance. It was a wolf in sheep's clothing, blending luxury, refinement, and speed without ever hinting at the power waiting to be unleashed. However, despite its quiet brilliance, the Aristo W300 wasn't without its flaws. The suspension, optimized more for comfort than corner-carving agility, meant that it couldn't handle tight corners with the same sharpness as some of its competitors. It was also a heavy car, so while its straight-line speed was impressive, it wasn't always the most nimble in more dynamic driving situations. And of course, the 2J ZGTE engine, while incredibly reliable, could be costly to repair if issues arose. But the Aristo W300 is remembered for what it achieved as a sleeper. It flew under the radar while being capable of blowing the doors off more aggressive performance cars. It was a perfect example of Toyota's quiet genius in the 90s. Now, just when you thought you'd seen it all, our next car is another unassuming sleeper. One that looks as ordinary as the next, but packs a punch in ways you wouldn't expect. Stick around, the best is yet to come. Number 5, 1996 Buick Roadmaster Estate Wagon LT1. A family wagon built for road trips, but with enough grunt to outpace just about anything on the highway. After the sleek and subtle performance of the Toyota Aristo Vive 300, we're shifting gears to something far more unconventional. A station wagon. Yes, you heard that right. The 1996 Buick Roadmaster Estate Wagon LT1 might have been marketed as the perfect family vehicle, but under that long utilitarian hood was something that would shock anyone who underestimated it. The Roadmaster Estate Wagon might have looked like something your grandparents would take to the grocery store, but it was packing some serious muscle. Thanks to the 5.7-liter LT 1V8 engine, which was a version of the same powerhouse found in the Chevrolet Corvette. The Roadmaster pushed out a healthy 260 horsepower and 330 pound-feet of torque. With an acceleration time of around 6.5 seconds to 60 miles per hour, it was more than capable of holding its own against the sportiest sedans and muscle cars of the era, far quicker than any typical family wagon. But don't let the exterior fool you. The Roadmaster was a full-size wagon designed for comfort, with plenty of interior space and a smooth ride. It combined a rich, velvety driving experience with a surprising amount of performance when you needed it most. Whether it was overtaking on the highway or hauling your family on a long road trip, this wagon wasn't about to let anything get in its way. However, there were a few things that prevented the Roadmaster from truly being recognized as the powerhouse it was. For one, its size made it less nimble and more prone to body roll compared to other, sportier sedans. And despite the LT1 engine, the Roadmaster was still marketed as a family vehicle, so it was often overshadowed by more obvious performance cars of the time. The styling, too, was a bit conservative for a car capable of such performance. Still, the Buick Roadmaster Estate Wagon LT1 remains one of the most surprising sleepers of the 90s. With a stealthy exterior and a monster engine, it could easily outrun much flashier competitors, all while carrying the kids and groceries in style. If you're enjoying this list of sleepers, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more hidden gems like these, because the next car on this list is a true surprise. Number 4, 1998 Mitsubishi Diamante VRX. A mid-size sedan that looked like your average daily driver, but had a secret performance edge that would leave you stunned. Following the surprise muscle of the Buick Roadmaster Estate Wagon, this one car blends luxury and performance in an almost unnoticeable way. The 1998 Mitsubishi Diamante VRX. On the surface, the Diamante appeared to be just another mid-sized sedan, a comfortable cruiser designed for daily commuting. But when you look closer, you'll realize that this car was far more capable than its exterior suggested. The Diamante VRX wasn't just about good looks. It was powered by a 3.5-liter V6 engine that delivered 200 horsepower and 205 pound-feet of torque. While that doesn't sound like much by today's standards, for a family sedan in the late 90s, it was more than enough to challenge some of the sportier sedans on the market. With a 0 to 60 mile per hour time of just 7.2 seconds, it could leave other normal sedans in the dust without so much as a second glance. What really makes the Diamante VRX stand out is its understated elegance. It didn't have a loud exhaust or an aggressive body kit. Instead, it had smooth, refined lines and a plush interior that exuded luxury, while its performance potential remained a well-kept secret. It was the type of car you wouldn't think twice about at the stoplight, only to be left in the dust by a car that looked perfectly ordinary. But like all great sleepers, the Diamante VRX had its imperfections. Despite its impressive power, its handling was less agile than that of its more performance-oriented rivals. The suspension leaned more toward comfort, making it less suited for sharp cornering or spirited driving. Additionally, Mitsubishi's marketing didn't emphasize the car's performance, which led many to overlook its potential. Still, the Diamante VRX proved that a well-rounded sedan could go much faster than anyone would expect. So how many of these under-the-radar sedans went unnoticed on the road? Would you consider the Diamante VRX one of the greatest sleepers of the 90s? Drop a comment and let me know. We're now entering the top 3. Get ready for some seriously stealthy beasts that will truly surprise you. Number 3, 1997 Lexus LS 400, a luxury sedan that silently dominates with a level of refinement and power that would make anyone second-guess it. The 1997 Lexus LS 400. At first glance, it seemed like just another refined sedan built for comfort, with no flashy cues to indicate the beast lurking beneath the surface. But as soon as you hit the accelerator, it becomes clear this car was anything but ordinary. Powered by the same silky smooth 4.0-liter V8 engine found in its predecessor, the second-gen LS 400 cranked out 280 horsepower and 300 pound-feet of torque. This engine, paired with a 0 to 60 mile per hour time of just 6.5 seconds, gave the LS400 performance that would have rivaled many sports sedans of the time. For context, this kind of acceleration was more than respectable in an era when many luxury sedans still focused heavily on comfort rather than outright speed. But the LS400 wasn't just about straight-line performance. Lexus combined that power with exceptional build quality and luxurious comfort, traits that made it the ideal long-distance cruiser. The interior felt like a first-class lounge on wheels, complete with high-end materials, advanced technology for its time, and whisper-quiet cabin insulation that allowed you to focus solely on the drive. In fact, the car's understated nature helped it slide under the radar, with most people thinking it was just another upscale sedan meant for leisurely drives. Of course, all good things have their limitations. While the LS400 excelled in comfort and refinement, its handling left a little to be desired compared to some of the sportier sedans on the market. It was a smooth, plush ride, but not as sharp or agile as some of its European counterparts. Additionally, its stealthy performance might have been overlooked by those who simply saw it as a comfortable car for corporate execs. Still, the 1997 Lexus LS400 proved that performance and luxury didn't have to be mutually exclusive. It was a sedan that could eat up highway miles effortlessly, yet still shock anyone brave enough to challenge it at a stoplight. Number 2, 1991 Mazda Sentia 929. A luxury sedan that looked harmless enough for daily commutes, yet had the power to outrun some of the sportier sedans of its time. The second spot on our list is a true sleeper, a car that could quietly cruise under the radar while packing enough punch to surprise anyone who thought they could take it on. The 1991 Mazda Sentia, also known as the 929S in some regions. On the outside, it was an elegant luxury sedan with subtle styling, designed for comfort rather than showing off. But what most people didn't know was that Mazda had tucked a performance-focused heart inside this unassuming car. Under the hood, the Sentia was equipped with a 3.0-liter V6 engine, producing 200 horsepower and 186 pound-feet of torque. With that kind of power, the Sentia wasn't just a cruiser. It could go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 7.3 seconds, a time that would surprise anyone expecting a soft, comfortable ride. In a market where many luxury sedans were more about comfort than speed, this car was ready to challenge the more aggressive competition when the opportunity arose. But the Sentia wasn't just about straight-line speed. It also offered impressive handling for its class. The lightweight construction and relatively stiff suspension gave it a more nimble feel than most of its contemporaries, helping it perform better than you'd expect from a car in its segment. While it wasn't a true sports sedan, the Sentia blended luxury with just enough edge to feel a little more exciting than the average luxury car of the early 90s. On the flip side, there were some downsides. The suspension, though sportier than most luxury sedans, was still tuned for comfort, so sharp cornering and tight handling weren't its strengths. It also lacked the prestige that some of its rivals like Lexus or BMW had, so its performance was often overlooked by the masses. This only added to its sleeper nature. In the end, the 1991 Mazda Sentia was the kind of car you could drive daily without attracting any attention, only to leave your competitors baffled when the light turned green. Its understated design and impressive power made it the perfect wolf in sheep's clothing. Now we're getting close to the top spot, and trust me, the final pick will blow your mind. Stick around. Number 1. 1994 Holden Commodore VRSS, a family sedan from down under that looked built for hauling groceries, but had the DNA of a V8 bruiser. At number 1, we land on a car most Americans never saw coming and probably still haven't. The 1994 Holden Commodore VRSS looked like your uncle's daily driver, modestly styled and often spotted pulling into suburban driveways across Australia. But behind that mild-mannered appearance was a street-ready powerhouse that could hold its own with some of the biggest names in performance sedans. The VRSS came armed with a 5.0-liter V8 engine, churning out 185 horsepower and a hefty 295 pound-feet of torque. While that horsepower figure might not sound wild by today's standards, it was the sheer torque delivery and rear-wheel drive setup that gave this car its bite. The acceleration was smooth but strong, managing 0 to 60 miles per hour in around 7.1 seconds, putting it ahead of plenty of so-called sports sedans from the same era. And it wasn't just quick in a straight line. Built on Holden's locally developed platform, the VRSS had handling that surprised many who got behind the wheel. With independent rear suspension, a limited slip differential, and a tuned chassis, This was a car you could push into corners with confidence. It maintained the feel of a traditional full-size sedan, but added a layer of agility that you wouldn't expect from something that, on the surface, looked like a carpool cruiser. What made the Commodore VRSS such a perfect sleeper wasn't just its performance, it was how ordinary it looked. No outrageous spoilers, no flashy vents, just a clean, mature body that didn't give away the storm brewing underneath. And unless you were a local, even the badge wouldn't clue you in. Of course, there were flaws. The interior was plain, even by 1990s standards. Build quality wasn't always consistent, and without proper maintenance, the drivetrain could wear faster than its Japanese or German rivals. But none of that mattered when this V8 sedan left pricier European sedans staring at its taillights. An unassuming Australian brawler that proves not all sleepers come from Japan or Detroit. If you've made it this far, you now know the quietest cars of the 90s were often the most dangerous. Which one of these quiet beasts would you sneak onto the streets for a late-night run? No flex, no flash, just pure stealth speed? Drop your favorite down in the comments, and if this list threw you a curveball or two, hit that subscribe. Because next up, we're digging into sleeper cars so fast some were nearly banned. You haven't seen anything yet.